She wasn't family. She wasn't even expected to stay. Yet when danger closed in on an elderly woman battling Alzheimer's, a black nanny stood between her and the unthinkable. What should have been a moment of gratitude soon turned into something far darker, an encounter that revealed prejudice, power, and a truth many still refuse to face. How could a single act of courage expose the hidden cruelty of those who claim to protect? This is the story, and once you hear it, you won't forget. For most people, her work went unnoticed. Quiet, steady, and devoted, the black nanny had built her life around caring for others. Each morning began the same, early walks through quiet streets, a worn coat wrapped against the chill, and the familiar sound of birds breaking dawn. She carried with her not just groceries and medicine, but patience, kindness, and the strength of someone who had seen struggle before. To her, looking after an elderly woman with Alzheimer's wasn't just a job, it was a duty of the heart. But what she didn't know was that soon, her loyalty would be tested in ways that no act of kindness should ever face. It began with a sound that didn't belong. The nanny had grown used to the quiet hum of the house, the ticking clock in the hallway, the soft shuffle of the elderly woman's slippers as she wandered from room to room, lost in fragmented memories. But this sound was different. A sharp knock at the door. Firm. Demanding. She froze for a moment, glancing toward the frail woman she cared for, who sat humming at the kitchen table, unaware of the intrusion. The knock came again, louder this time, echoing through the hallway like a warning. When she opened the door, a man stood there, tall, uniformed, his expression hard as stone. A security guard from the neighborhood. His eyes swept over her face, then passed her into the house. He didn't greet her. Didn't explain. Just looked at her the way some men look when they've already decided what you are. "Ma'am, I'll need to know what you're doing here," he said flatly. Her heart skipped. She had been working in this home for months. Neighbors had seen her carry groceries, escort the elderly woman on short walks, guide her gently back when confusion took hold. Yet here she was, treated as if she didn't belong, as if every hour she had poured into caring meant nothing. She explained, her voice steady but tight, that she was the caregiver. That the woman inside needed her. That she had been hired by the family. But the guard's expression didn't soften. His gaze lingered on her skin, her worn clothes, the way her hands trembled as she clutched the doorframe. It wasn't the words he used, it was the unspoken weight behind them. A message clear as daylight: you don't belong here. The next day, it escalated. She noticed the stares first. Neighbors pausing a little too long, whispering just after she passed. A woman walking her dog crossed the street rather than greet her. The same security guard cruised by twice in his patrol car, his eyes following her every step as she led the old woman back from the garden. Each look cut deeper, but she held her head high. This wasn't the first time she had been judged for nothing more than existing where others thought she shouldn't. Still, the heaviness pressed on her chest, harder with each passing hour. Then came the confrontation. It happened on a bright afternoon, the kind of day that should have felt ordinary. The elderly woman had grown restless, insisting on walking down the block. The nanny held her arm gently, keeping pace with her slow steps. But halfway down the street, the security guard appeared again, this time on foot. He didn't address the elderly woman. He didn't offer help or kindness. Instead, he stopped in front of them, blocking the path. His hand hovered near his belt, where a radio and a baton rested. "I've had reports," he said coldly, "that someone matching your description has been trespassing in this area. Care to explain yourself?" Her chest tightened. Reports? Trespassing? She swallowed hard, willing herself to stay calm. The elderly woman tugged at her arm, confused by the tension. "I live here," the nanny said firmly. "I care for her. Ask anyone in this household." But the guard's eyes narrowed, his voice dropping lower, sharper. "Funny how that story always comes up. Always." As if he had rehearsed it, as if women like her were just another category, another excuse he had heard before. The words weren't about proof, they were about power. The nanny's heart pounded. She knew the danger of moments like this. She had seen headlines. She had heard stories whispered in her own community. One wrong word, one wrong movement, and she could become another statistic. She steadied herself, meeting his stare, though fear burned in her chest. The elderly woman clutched her hand tighter, trembling without understanding why. Finally, the guard stepped back, his tone still laced with suspicion. "Watch yourself," he muttered, before walking away. But she knew this was far from over. That night, she couldn't sleep. Each creak of the old house felt like a warning. She replayed the confrontation in her head, over and over, her breath catching as she imagined what could have happened if his suspicion had turned violent. And beneath the fear, another emotion burned: anger. Anger that her dignity could be stripped so easily. Anger that her kindness, her service, her humanity could be reduced to suspicion simply because of her skin. The following week brought no relief. She noticed shadows lingering near the house. Cars slowing down as she stepped outside. The guards' patrols became more frequent, each pass slower than the last. The message was clear: she was being watched. One evening, as she prepared dinner, the doorbell rang again. She opened it to find not one but two men this time. The same guard and another figure, dressed sharply, clearly wealthy. His suit, his watch, his silence, all carried authority. He didn't speak right away. He didn't need to. His eyes assessed her like property, weighing her presence, questioning her existence. This man, she realized, was the son of the woman she cared for. The millionaire. The one who had left his mother in her hands. And yet, instead of gratitude, there was suspicion etched into his face. The guard gestured toward her, as if presenting evidence. "This is her. The one I told you about." For a moment, silence stretched between them. The elderly woman appeared behind her, eyes clouded, asking softly if dinner was ready. The nanny answered gently, guiding her back inside, but the weight of their stares clung to her. Her pulse raced. The air felt heavy, suffocating. This wasn't just about one guard anymore. It was about power, about perception, about a world where her truth could be dismissed with a glance. Would they believe her? Would they see her for who she was, or only what they assumed she must be? The millionaire finally spoke, his voice measured, almost too calm. "We'll see about this." Her stomach dropped. It wasn't over. It was just beginning. The nanny thought her worst fear was being harassed by a guard who refused to see her humanity. But soon, she would learn the deeper betrayal, the kind that doesn't just come from strangers, but from those with the power to change everything. The silence in the room was suffocating. The black nanny stood in the hallway, her hands clenched, her pulse racing, as the wealthy son, the millionaire, sat across from her, flanked by the security guard who had shadowed her every step for weeks. The elderly woman, confused and fragile, wandered aimlessly between them, humming softly to herself, unaware that the air was thick with accusation. The guard spoke first. "Sir, I told you. She's been here without proper authorization. Neighbors have seen her wandering, acting suspicious." Suspicious. That word. It had followed her like a shadow her entire life, a chain wrapped around her presence wherever she went. Suspicious in a grocery store. Suspicious on the bus. Suspicious in this very house where she had poured her soul into caregiving. Now it was being wielded as evidence against her. The millionaire's eyes narrowed, flicking between her and the man he trusted to secure his property. He didn't see the months of care, the nights she stayed awake comforting his mother through confusion and fear, the quiet strength she carried into every moment. He only saw her skin, her silence, her trembling hands. He stood slowly, adjusting his suit jacket, every movement deliberate, calculated. "Do you understand what this looks like?" he asked coldly. Her voice caught in her throat. She wanted to scream. "What does it look like? A woman feeding, protecting, and saving your mother every single day? Or does it only look like trespass when someone like me does it?" But she didn't scream. She couldn't. She had learned long ago that raising her voice would only harden theirs. I have worked here for months, she said, her tone steady despite the storm in her chest. Your mother knows me. I've cared for her when no one else would. Look at her. Ask her. She'll tell you. But the millionaire's gaze slid past the old woman, who was now staring absently at the curtains, lost in the haze of Alzheimer's. The one voice that could defend her was locked away, unreachable, trapped behind fading memories. The guard stepped closer, his presence looming. People like her, he said with venom, always find ways to get in. Always have a story. People like her. The words sliced deep. A lifetime of prejudice condensed into 3 syllables, thrown at her like a weapon. The millionaire nodded slightly, as though confirmation had been given. Then he delivered the words that shattered her world. I think it's best if you leave. Her knees nearly buckled. Leave? Leave the woman who depended on her for survival? Leave the fragile soul who cried out her name in the night, who clung to her hand in moments of terror? The injustice of it burned in her chest, yet the power imbalance was undeniable. She stood there, frozen, every instinct screaming to fight, to plead, to demand recognition for the love she had given. But she also knew, this wasn't just about losing a job. This was about survival. The guard took a step forward, his hand brushing against the baton at his side. The message was clear: resist, and pay the price. Her chest tightened, fear flooding her veins. She glanced at the elderly woman, who now looked at her with a fleeting spark of recognition, whispering her name softly, almost like a prayer. For a moment, their eyes locked. In that fragile connection, truth existed, the truth of devotion, of care, of humanity. But it wasn't enough to outweigh the prejudice in the room. She reached for her bag, hands trembling, heart breaking with every second. The guard smirked, his suspicion satisfied, his power secured. The millionaire turned away, already dismissing her, already moving on as though she were a ghost that had passed through his perfect world. But just as she stepped toward the door, something shifted. The elderly woman, with surprising strength, clutched her arm. Her voice, though frail, rose with a clarity that pierced the silence. Don't leave. The room froze. The millionaire turned, his face pale, his certainty cracking for the first time. The guard blinked, momentarily thrown off balance. The nanny's throat tightened, tears burning in her eyes. It was the first time in weeks the woman had spoken with such clarity, the fog of Alzheimer's parting just enough for her to grasp what was being taken away. But instead of softening, the son's expression hardened further. She's confused, he said quickly, dismissing his own mother's plea. This conversation is over. Over. That single word carried the weight of finality, of injustice cemented in stone. The guard moved again, stepping closer, his authority swelling in the silence. She knew then that her presence in this home, her sacrifice, her humanity, it would all be erased, rewritten as a trespass, a danger, a crime she never committed. The moment felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, the ground crumbling beneath her feet. If she resisted, she risked becoming another name in the headlines, another black body unjustly accused. If she left, she carried the weight of betrayal, the crushing knowledge that even love and loyalty could not shield her from the cruelty of prejudice. Her heart thundered as the elderly woman clung to her, whispering again, "Don't leave." The nanny's chest heaved with silent fury, with grief, with the unbearable truth of her powerlessness. Every muscle in her body screamed to fight, but the unspoken history of others before her, those who resisted and paid the price, pressed against her shoulders. The guard's hand lingered near his holster. The air was electric, dangerous. For one unbearable moment, the world seemed to pause. And in that pause, the weight of centuries bore down on her. This wasn't just about her. It wasn't just about this house, this woman, this family. It was about every story like hers that had been silenced, dismissed, erased. She exhaled slowly, forcing her body to remain still. Survival demanded it. But inside, something broke. As she stepped out the door, the sound of it slamming behind her echoed like a verdict. The night air was cold against her skin, her vision blurred with tears. She had been cast out not because of what she had done, but because of who she was. And the cruelest part? The woman she had given her heart to still reached for her in confusion, calling her name long after she was gone. The nanny stood on the sidewalk, her chest heaving, her world shattered. The security guard lingered by the gate, his expression smug, victorious. The millionaire disappeared inside, his conscience silent, his privilege intact. But deep within the nanny, beneath the fear and the heartbreak, something else began to burn, a fire that would not go out. Because she knew the truth, injustice can silence a voice, but it cannot erase the memory of love, of courage, of standing firm in the face of cruelty. And as the night swallowed her, one question rang louder than all the rest. How many more must be cast out before the world finally sees the truth? She walked away from that house with nothing in her hands but everything in her heart shattered. The door that closed behind her was more than wood and hinges, it was a symbol of a world that still decides who belongs and who does not. For days, she replayed the moment in her mind. The look on the guard's face, the cold dismissal of the millionaire, the frail hand of the woman she loved to care for reaching out in desperation. The sting of injustice was not new to her, but this time it felt heavier. Because this time, it wasn't a stranger on the street, or a clerk in a store, or whispers behind her back. This time, it was inside a home she had poured her life into. A home she had filled with warmth, with comfort, with dignity for someone who could no longer hold on to her own memories. She had given her all, and still, it was not enough to erase the prejudice etched into their eyes. The elderly woman's condition worsened quickly after she was gone. Without the steady hands that guided her, without the voice that soothed her confusion, her world became darker. The son, so certain of his decision, eventually faced the consequences of choosing suspicion over humanity. But the truth is, even if he saw it, he never admitted it. He lived on in wealth and comfort, untouched by the wound he left behind. For the nanny, the pain became a scar, a reminder that even acts of love could be met with hate when seen through the lens of racism. Yet that scar also carried strength. Because behind every injustice, there is a story that refuses to be silenced. She found her voice in telling it, not just for herself, but for all those who had been cast aside, doubted, or erased simply because of who they were. This was not just her story. It was the story of countless others. A story of neighbors who call the police on those who don't look like they belong. A story of workers questioned not for their actions but for their skin. A story of lives dismissed, dignity stripped, humanity denied. And it forces us to ask, how many more times will this happen before the world chooses to change? Because racism is not always shouted, it is often whispered. It hides in suspicion, in silence, in doors closed quietly while justice is pushed aside. But every story like hers brings it into the light, demanding that it cannot be ignored. She was cast out of that house, but she was never truly defeated. Her courage lives in the memory of her care, in the truth of what really happened, in the voices that refused to let her story die. And now, it lives in you. So the question is not just what happened to her, but what will we do with the truth we've been shown? Will we turn away, comfortable in silence, or will we choose to see, to speak, to stand? Because if her story teaches us anything, it is this: injustice grows strongest in silence, but change begins the moment we refuse to look away.